Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 104, coming at you from the Valley on this beautiful Thursday. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for this weekly MMA podcast, streaming anywhere you listen to your podcasts, with the videos on YouTube. And what a show we have today. A lot to talk about, as we have fights that have been announced. We have some John Jones stuff. I'm going to go over my top 10 UFC greatest of all time fighters with some legacy honorable mentions. We're going to recap Tuesday's episode of The Ultimate Fighter, last night's UFC BJJ inaugural event. We will also recap UFC Fight Night Baku and preview this weekend's International Fight Week card. What a show, what a show. And this weekend, I had actually bought the pay-per-view because I will be going to a local promotion here in Phoenix, Rough MMA, which will be Ezra Elliott, I believe is the main event, or on the main card, one of Sugar Sean O'Malley's training partners, jiu-jitsu stud, I think one IBJJF, if not close to, and is earning his way on the Contender Series. Also in the Red Hawk Academy, Tommy McMillan fighting for the Contender Series, I believe will be airing this fall. So I'll be watching the pay-per-view, pre-gaming, watching as much as I can before Rough, and then watching on demand, although I'll know the results because I'll be making some bets. But yeah, stoked for a jam-packed UFC weekend. Before we get away weekend off, we have the 4th of July holidays. I'm heading back to Montana to enjoy some cooler weather, lake days, friends, family. Yeah, I need it. So let's jump right in. We have some fights that have been announced. We have Mike Davis taking on Mitch Ramirez July 12th. A couple fights added to UFC 318 in NOLA. We have Kevin Holland and Daniel Rodriguez, which was actually booked through that fiasco of last-minute changes, probably a couple years ago now when Khamzat was on the card. There was a bunch of fallout. It was Kevin Holland, Daniel Rodriguez, but Kevin Holland, I think, ended up fighting Ponzinibbio or somebody. So that should be a great fight. We get Ryan Spann and Lucas Bresky also on that pay-per-view card. On July 26th, we have Muslim Sadykhov and Carlos Leal. That should be a fun banger. August 2nd, we have Rinya Nakamura taking on Nathan Fletcher, Ultimate Fighter alum. August 9th, I hate that this is in the Apex, but we get Andre Fili, Christian Rodriguez. That should deliver. August 23rd, they have started building out the Shanghai card. We have Sumaderi taking on Kevin Borjas. In the co-main event, which I think should be the main event, we get former champion Aljamain Sterling taking on Brian Ortega. I hope that this is a 5-round event. They have not announced that since it's the co-main. And the main event going to be Johnny Walker and Zhang Mingyang. Both of their last victories over Anthony Smith, which is kind of ironic. I'm not sure how Johnny Walker is still getting main events on a card, but it is what it is. On September 6th, we have Nasruddin Imavov and Kyle Braulio as the main event for that Paris card. We also have Renat Fakhretdinov taking on Andreas Gustafsson. Big jump up for Gustafsson. I love it. We got Beloyi Oki taking on Mason Jones. 2 up-and-coming prospects. That should be a really good bout. And then September 13th on the UFC Noche in San Antonio, we get Jared Gordon and Rafa Garcia. And the main event official, Diego Lopez, Gene Silva. Absolute banger. Although I wish we did see Diego Lopez and Yair Rodriguez, which means either Volk's going to take some time off or we'll be waiting for Yair Rodriguez in the next title shot. Stealing the headlines this week, we have John Jones officially announcing retirement. I am a little bit bummed. I did think the fight was going to happen. Dana White said it was going to happen. Obviously, you probably saw what happened with John Jones in Albuquerque. Why he still lives there, I'm not too sure. He's always getting in trouble. That may have some things to deal with the retirement. Maybe he didn't want the smoke with Tom Aspinall. My takeaways, I'm a big John Jones fan. He has done some wrongings. I think the picogram test goes, Sean O'Malley tested for that. Lots of guys tested through the picogram phase. I do think that was tainted substances. I do not think they were trying to cheat. I'm not going to hold that against him. To me, I loved his career. He did what he did. I am not going to take away from him, and I am naming him number 1 overall of the UFC's all-time greatest fighters. I mean, youngest champion, came in, undefeated, moved up, all the time off. I just wish all those years that we had no John Jones, due to suspensions and everything else, we could have had more fights. His biggest layoff was from 2020 to 2023, and then obviously hasn't fought since November of 24. And then there was a couple years we only got 1 fight. But let's look back. He beat Stipe, Cyril Gane. Say what you want about him. Stipe's old. Well, Cyril Gane is one of the cleanest kickboxing heavyweights we've ever seen, and he made slight work of him. That's how good John Jones is. And that was when he was age 36, 35, which is wild because he's technically still in his prime. Dominic Reyes, I know it was a controversial fight, but Dominic Reyes at the time was a killer. Thiago Santos, close fight. I did think John won. I saw that live. My one and only John Jones fight live. First ever UFC event for my birthday weekend in 2019. Thiago Santos, an absolute monster. Anthony Smith, pretty solid at the time. I wouldn't say an absolute monster. But Alexander Gustafsson at the time was an absolute beast. Obviously, he has defeated Daniel Cormier twice, although the last one overturned because of the turnable metabolite, which isn't a good metabolite. So, although I say the picogram things, you never know. He beat OSP, beat Glover Teixeira at that time. Glover Teixeira, obviously, clearly an animal, came back, moved up divisions, defended against a lot of young guys well into his late 30s and early 40s. I mean, at the time, after losing to John Jones, let's see what he did. He beat OSP, beat Rashad Evans, beat Jared Cannonier, beat Misha Serkinov, beat Nikita Krylov, defeated Thiago Santos, Jan Blachowicz, and damn near defeated Yuri Prohaska and Jamahal Hill. I mean, still a stud. Defeated Chael Sonnen, defeated Vitor Belfort, defeated Rashad Evans, defeated Lyoto Machida, defeated Quentin Jackson, defeated Mauricio Shogun Rua for his first championship strap. And don't forget, at this time, all of you post-COVID Conor McGregor era fans, that section of Gustafsson, Chael Sonnen, Vitor Belfort, Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida, Quentin Jackson, and Shogun, and Ryan Bader. One hell of a run. I mean, he has the accolades, and if you watched him, his fighting IQ, everything he brought to the sport, I do think he's the best of the best, and I think a lot of the best will give him that credit. We have GSP coming in at number 2. I think that's pretty standard across most, and then Mighty Mouse at number 3. I wish he didn't get traded. A lot of these, there's wishes. I'm going to go Anderson Silva, number 5. In his peak, he was one of the bests. Number 6, I have Islam Makhachev because he is still going. I think we get at least 3 more fights. I do think he beats Jack Della, and he could supplant it with a home run if he does go back to lightweight and faces the El Matador, who I think will win this weekend. I have Khabib at number 7. He retired too early. His resume is just not the same. I mean, if we look at Khabib here, he was undefeated. The Gaethje Poirier fights, Conor McGregor, those were great wins. Edson Barboza, But before that, the only other quality win I would say is Rafael dos Anjos back in 2014. A lot of the other guys, I don't even know. Kamal Shaloris, Gleason Tebow, Tiago Tavares, Pat Healy, Abel Trujillo, Daryl Horcher. I mean, it's just not the same. So that's why I have Khabib further back. Number 8, I got Jose Aldo, WEC days, UFC days. I mean, the guy's been there, done that. He had an aura around him. Number 9, I have Alexander Volkanovski for what he's done and the people that he's beaten. Max Holloway through his prime, and what he's done has been utterly amazing. Number 10, I have a little bit of a combo, and it's really going to depend how things play out. We got Merab Dvalishvili and Ilia Topuria. Still plenty of time left in their career, especially Ilia, and that is today. I think the level of UFC competition across all weight classes is up over the past 10 years, and they're right smack dab in kind of this new era of guys that are training MMA coming in, where a lot of these other guys, GSP, Anderson Silva, you were a kickboxer, you didn't do great with grappling, and that was your skill. Or you were a BJJ guy, a Damian Maia. Merab Dvalishvili, already the best bantamweight champion of all time. I think the toughest division besides lightweight, which makes Ilia Topuria's run even better. He's not even 30 years old, and I think we will see him fight for a long time. I would expect Ilia and Merab to be probably damn near in the 5, 6, 7 spot by the end of it. I do have some legacy honorable mentions because of what they've done for the sport, the aura, just what had happened. My UFC experience goes back to, I want to say the first Chuck Liddell fight against, oh Jesus, why am I blanking on his name? The California stud at the time, I hated him. I was always pro Chuck. Tito Ortiz. So their first fight, was in 2004. So I would say about 2003, I became a big fan of the UFC, which at that time I'm 11 years old. So, teenager, as good of a fan as you could be. There typically was a big UFC card every other month or so, and my best friend and his stepdad would host UFC parties, and I would be locked in, and I would make bets, and although it wasn't money, I would pick fighters. I loved the shit. My favorite fighter of all time, BJ Penn, 2 champion, 2 weight class champion, moved up all the way to light heavyweight to fight Lyoto Machida, battled GSP. I think in that window, he was one of the nastiest. Joe Rogan is always talking about how good he was. If you watched him, if you know, you know. And if you don't, go back to Fight Pass and check it out. I also have Randy Couture on there, Stipe Miocic, Fedor, Alex Pajeda. Alex just came in so late. If he racks up a few more wins, 4 or 5 more wins before he retires, he could be up there. I have Matt Hughes, Chuck Liddell, Amanda Nunez, and Henry Cejudo as my legacy honorable mentions. So would love to get your guys' feedback on those, but that's my list. This week we had episode 5 of Ultimate Fighter. I am a huge Ultimate Fighter fan, and I'm not going to lie. I have not been very locked into this season. A lot of foreign guys. I don't know. It's just something's missing here. But this week, Team DC won again as he had a grappling heavy fighter just take it to Chell's fighter for 2 rounds. That's really the recap. Again, maybe tune into the latter half of this season if you're not a huge Ultimate Fighter guy. But last night we had BJJ, UFC BJJ 1. I didn't realize until about Tuesday that the YouTube series they were doing is basically Ultimate Fighter BJJ style. They do fighter stories and, kind of help you understand who these guys are before the matchups. There was some fun matchups. I was enjoying it. The one that really got me rubbed the wrong way was the loss that Jason Nolf had, who is a Penn State champion wrestler. The way the scoring works is it is 3 5-minute rounds, which is very unique compared to what other major BJJ tournaments are. And you have to be very active with submission attempts. So if you're a wrestler, you're taking guys down, staying in full guard, trying to move around, you need to have submission attempts. A guy got a last-second armbar that had him win the bout. I was pretty pissed about that. Well, his opponent got hurt, so he had a second chance. He ended up losing anyways. But you really have to be offensively submission grappling in this new promotion. And then last night we had the championships. Mikey's team pretty much dominated throughout, but the two champions came from Team Gabriel. Andrew Tackett, this is the name to tune into. His championship bout against Varela was awesome. All of his bouts have been awesome. He is the perfect face of UFC BJJ. Only 22 years old. He has a very viewership, friendly style, a guy to tune into that makes BJJ fun. And then on the other weight class, we had Henrique defeating Moreira. It was a decent matchup. I'm not a fan of a lot of guys jumping guards, leg entanglement, and leg lock battles, which Mikey Musayev did beat Gabriel for the championship, but he just went straight for leg locks and leg entanglement situations. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't think viewers will be a big fan of that. So my takeaway is tune into Andrew Tackett. I hope they just let the best of the best face off. I know there is the CJI, the ADCC, and the UFC isn't going to let these guys go to all those tournaments. So it'll be interesting to see the roster as that takes shape. They do have a slate of events. I think they have 3 more events this year with belts on the line. But again, Andrew Tackett, that's my takeaway. It's fun. I like the octagon setup with the steep slopes. They got a lot of things going for them, but I was not a big fan of the championship. Besides Andrew Tackett and Mikey Musayev, I was not a huge fan of just straight leg lock attacks. What else transpired over the weekend? We had BKFC 76. I did not tune into the full card. I just watched some ex-UFCers. We had Andrei Arlovsky with a round 4 TKO over Josh Copeland. He faced off with Ben Rothwell into the ring. They're talking about a future championship bout. You could tell the older Andrei Arlovsky a little timid about accepting a bout with Ben Rothwell. He is an absolute animal in BKFC. And then we had Jessica I with a unanimous decision over Maria Agapova. We had the PFL event again, lightweights, bantamweights, and women's flyweight semifinals. The big signing for the PFL was Kevin Lee. Well, Godzi Rabadanov only needed 2.5 minutes to knock out Kevin Lee. Kevin has gone on social media saying that he can't take those shots anymore. It seems like he's probably going to retire and just try to do online coaching, instructionals, that sort of thing. Bummer for Kevin. He's still so young. But Godzi Rabadanov, I do think, is one of the best PFL rostered fighters today that could be a solid lightweight in the UFC. And how about Liz Carmouche? 41 years old, gets a dominant unanimous decision over Alora Dana with her grappling. Still doing it, making that bread. You got to give respect to people like that at 41, still going for it. Try to win that $500,000. We have a couple of UW, University of Wyoming alums. Archie Coughlin with a beautiful, vicious fight and a unanimous decision over Mansoor Barnoui. That was a fun fight. If you have ESPN Plus, I highly recommend you tuning back into that one. We had Marceli Alves dominate Jake Hadley to a unanimous decision. Jake Hadley is definitely just not at the level that he should be and has been dominated. A lot of these ex-UFC guys, the UFC doesn't re-sign them, and a guy like Jake Hadley, you're like, well, why not? Now I know why. A lot of these guys just don't end up turning out. We had Alfie Davis with the unanimous decision over Brent Primus. Great bout there. Magomed Magomedov, unanimous decision over Sarvarjan Kamidov. And then Dara Kelly, undefeated 8-0 with a round 3 submission via rear neck crank over Mike Hamill, the other Wyoming alumni. Decent card. It was all about the Kevin Lee show. There wasn't much of a show. Archie Coughlin's fight against Mansoor Barnoui definitely stole the show. Hopefully the PFL could deliver a little bit better product tomorrow. Back in Chi-Town, we have middleweights, light heavyweights, and heavyweights. Prelims at 5:30 p.m. Pacific on ESPN Plus. The main card, 7:30 p.m. Pacific on ESPN. It'll be late for the East Coasters. We get Oleg Popov taking on ex-UFCer Rodrigo Nascimento. I think Nascimento's going to get that win. We have Valentin Moldavsky against ex-UFCer Alexander Romanov. That should be a good fight. I'm taking Romanov. We have Antonio Carlos Jr. taking on Simeon Powell. I think Powell will get the win. But probably the three biggest fights for me, we get Dalton Rosta taking on Aaron Jeffrey. That one should be a ton of fun. There's some bad blood there. The return of Sergio Pettis taking on Rafian Stotts. See if Pettis could avoid just being grappled to death. And then Phil Davis taking on Josh Silveira. Solid card. I think the finals will be a little bit better. I still have not been wowed by the PFL, and I think they've taken a lot of L's that we've discussed over the past couple months on this show. But let's talk about UFC Fight Night Baku. I went 8-2 on my picks. So overall, I'm 628 wins, 320 losses, 9 no contests and draws. On the year, 144 wins, 79 losses, 2 no contests and draws. And, leading up to the fight, post-fight, everyone talks so highly of Baku. There was concern with what was going on in the Middle East if this would happen, because it's a pretty neighboring country to Iran. But people really gave props to the architecture, the food, the people, the arena. People say they want to go visit. I would love to visit. Never been somewhere like that. Like there, Dubai, those types of places would be phenomenal. The fans were there pretty early. It was late their time. They weren't very loud. And they pretty much cleared out after the Fiziev fight. They didn't care about the non-foreigners in the main event. A ton of decision bouts overall, especially in the prelims, which were pretty much a snooze fest. But everyone was very impressed by Seokyeon Ko, and the final 3 fights were good, all things considered. I'm surprised no finishes at least in one of those final 3 fights. But the highlight for me was definitely the Nazim Nikolas Motta fight. I am recapping this card a 6 out of 10. Some good fights that I did not break down. We got Seokyeon Ko with unanimous decision over Oban Elliott. We have Jungyoung Park over Ismail Nardiev, who landed a vicious illegal knee in round 2. And Park continued on and got the win. But let's kick this thing off in the prelims. We got Tagir Ulanbekov with unanimous decision over Azat Maksum. And this fight was another hard-fought prelim decision that showcased how well-rounded the young Azat is. A big showing from his UFC debut. And Tagir definitely was the fighter coming forward here and landing the bigger shots. But man, Azat had his fair share of good strikes landed. The volume did side to Tagir, although it was very close. I did have Tagir winning all 3 rounds. It very well may have been 2-1 with Tagir still winning 2 out of the 3. But Azat was super game. He's going to be another very good flyweight. The flyweight division is getting a surplus of young talent coming into the division. But Tagir finds a way to win on the short notice matchup. Statistically, Tagir landed 78 total strikes, 56 of them significant. He was 3 for 7 in takedown attempts with 56 seconds of control time. And Tagir extends his winning streak to 4. He moves up 1 spot in the rankings to number 11. Azat extends his losing streak to 2. He's 1-2 in the UFC. So what's next? I say just rebook Kyoji Horiguchi and Tagir. And for Azat, he didn't lose any stock in this fight. If anything, he raised his stock. I would love to see him fight Cody Durden. Then moving into the main card, we had Muhammad Naimov with unanimous decision over Bogdan Grad. And this fight played out about exactly how you'd expect it to. I did not expect Bogdan to more than triple the takedown attempts of Naimov in this fight. But this fight was kind of like the fights preceding it. Very hard fought back and forth affair. The fight stayed standing for the most part of round 1 and through the fight. Although Grad went 1 for 3 in takedowns, Naimov controlled the center of the octagon and landed the more meaningful strikes. Damage is the number 1 scoring criteria. Round 2, Bogdan got a takedown early, had some good control time, had some ground and pound, probably stole the round, which set us up for a winner-takes-all round 3. Well, round 3, Naimov started to get after it, and both men ended up getting takedowns, but Naimov finished the round and had more ground and pound to win a very close fight, so I was not opposed to the decision. Statistically, Muhammad landed 70 total strikes, 18 of them significant. He had 1 takedown in 3 attempts, a submission attempt, and 2 minutes and 53 seconds of control time. Bogdan landed 49 total strikes, 31 of them significant. He was 3 for 10 in takedowns with 5 minutes and 9 seconds of control time. So Muhammad extends that winning streak to 2. He's 6-1 since 2023. Bogdan ends his 4-fight winning streak, starts a new losing streak. He's 2-1 in the UFC. So what's next for these gents? Well, give me Muhammad Naimov and Joanderson Brito. That's the fight to make. And for Bogdan, how about Ricardo Ramos? Then we had the fight that stole the show. We had Nazim Sadykhov with a round 2 knockout over Nikolas Motta. And golly, if you don't know about Nikolas Motta, this guy fights like a gladiator. He has a legit kill or be killed style, and that was on full display. Throughout the fight, Nazim showcased better footwork and technique, but Motta landed a couple big shots early that put pretty much the hometown Sadykhov, who had a huge backing from the crowd and a big pop when he came out, put him up against the cage, and Nikolas just went to town, down, up, body, head, landed about 100 shots. Maybe not quite 100, but Jesus, he put out some volume and emptied the take. But you got to give Nazim credit. He was able to hang in there, although he was pretty much knocked down, was able to grab a leg of Motta and make it to round 2. And I knew instantly, I tweeted or X'd, put out an X tweet, that, Naimov did good with what he could, covering up, trying to block the body shots, block the head shots, although he took a lot of damage, where I think he exhausted Motta, and he kind of accepted some of Motta's aggressiveness, knowing he'd empty the tank. And I thought he'd be in a good spot in round 2. And I think that was what was the truth, because he did take his best shots trying to get a finish. But round 2, Nazim controlled the pace, was having the better of some wild exchanges. These guys were throwing some heat. And he ended up knocking Motta down, put him against the cage, and then Nazim went for broke and got the finish. The crowd went crazy. I mean, a round and a half of absolute chaos. If you didn't watch it, go back on ESPN Plus or Fight Pass. Statistically, Nazim landed 102 total strikes, 93 of them significant. He was 0 for 1 with takedowns, had a knockdown in 1 minute and 29 seconds of control time. And Nikolas landed 76 total, 66 of them significant with a knockdown. I'd bet you 60 of those total strikes were in that crazy moment in round 1. So Nazim now, he extends that winning streak to 11. He does have a draw in there. He's 5-0-1 since 2023. And Nikolas ends his 2-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak. He is 2-2-1 since 2023. So what's next? Well, I would love to see Nazim and Esteban Rabovic square off. That's an absolute banger. And for Motta, how about Tofiq Musayev? I think that would be a fight that would deliver 100%. Speaking of Musayev, I ended up picking him, a fight I got wrong. We had Myktybek Orolbai with a round 1 submission via Kimura over Tofiq Musayev. And supposedly these two had trained together, which I did not know, so they knew each other well coming in. Well, this was a classic striker versus grappler, and we did not get to see much of that unravel, as I was hoping, because Orolbai was able to get takedowns at will. Every time Tofiq landed that mid-body kick, big, powerful kick, Myktybek was well prepared. He caught the leg and would get Tofiq down. After the second takedown, he got the back and sunk in a Kimura. Statistically, Tofiq only landed 17 total strikes, 2 of them significant. Myktybek landed 15 total strikes, 2 of them significant. He was 3 for 5 in takedown attempts, a submission attempt, and 3 minutes and 40 seconds of control time. So Orolbai starts a new winning streak. He's 5-1 since 2023, 3-1 in the UFC. And Tofiq ends his 2-fight winning streak with Rizvan. He is now 0-1 in his UFC debut. So as I mentioned, I would like to see Tofiq fight Nikolas Motta, and Orolbai could take on Ismail Bonfim. That is a fantastic matchup. Moving on, we had Curtis Blaydes with a split decision victory over Rizvan Kuniev. And again, the theme of this fight night was very hard-fought decision bouts that were razor close, and this was another example of that. I did agree with the decision here. I gave rounds 1 and 3 to Curtis. Round 1 was obviously easier to score because Curtis had Rizvan on his back foot and landed a beautiful blast double in round 1. But Rizvan's a big dude. You know, Curtis was able to control the round, land some good strikes, but he exhausted a ton of energy against the big-bodied Rizvan, who showcased a good motor and grappling defense. I mean, he was right at the heavyweight limit. Then in round 2, Rizvan ended up stuffing all of Curtis's takedown attempts, and I think kind of broke Blaydes in doing so, which opened up Rizvan's striking. He landed some good combinations that had Blaydes pretty bloodied up in the face, and Curtis transitioned to his jab, but Rizvan definitely won that round, which set us up 1-1 going into a winner-takes-all round 3. Now, again, I kind of slandered Kuniev coming in, like, why the hell is he getting a top 5 opponent? But he showed that he's going to be a tough out in the heavyweight division. You know, he's a little bit older, but again, he's a massive heavyweight who moves pretty good, has solid striking, and he actually out-cardioed Curtis, which is pretty impressive. But Curtis in round 3 showcased his willpower in the 3rd round going to work. He was landing just a straight, nice jab over and over, had a couple decent combos that led to takedowns, but he didn't have any luck. He was pretty much caught up against the cage. And due to the energy he spent trying to take down Rizvan, Kuniev was able to land some big shots at the end of the round, but you can't win a round with, 15 good shots at the end of the round. It was a dogfight that took everything each guy had to offer, but I do agree with the decision. A lot of people think Rizvan won. I disagree. Statistically, Curtis landed 101 total strikes, 56 of them significant. He only got 2 takedowns in 15 attempts. Again, at heavyweight against a guy like that takes an insane amount of energy. Just go try to shoot 15 takedowns and see how you feel. He had 5 minutes and 21 seconds of control time. And Rizvan, you can see the stats are about halved. He landed 58 total strikes, 45 of them significant. So about half of the total strikes and 11 less in the significant category. But Curtis starts a new winning streak. He's 2-2 since 2023. He moves up 1 spot in the rankings to number 4. And Rizvan starts a new losing streak in his UFC debut. He's only 1-1 since 2023. He hasn't been very active, but he enters the UFC heavyweight rankings at number 15. So where do these big guys go next? Well, now that John is retired, the heavyweight division is interesting. I do expect the UFC to book Tom and Cyril Gahn. And with Sergey taking on Waldo, I think Jailton Almeida and Alexander Volkov will be booked. So that puts Curtis up against veteran Marcin Tybura. And then for Rizvan, he could fight Sergey Spivak. Moving into the co-main event. I thought this had fight of the night written all over it. I expected violence because what Ignacio had shown us. I did pick Rafael Fiziev. I know a lot of people picked Ignacio. But I figured Ignacio, being the taller and longer striker, he would be more aggressive. But Fiziev, he was just too crisp, too quick, and technical. That was the case in this fight. I actually expected Ignacio in the biggest fight of his career to be more aggressive. The fight was tit for tat, but Fiziev landed more combos, volume, and damage throughout each round. The first round, both men were pretty measured and patient. Fiziev can't just storm in against the very long Bahamondes. But then in round 2, Rafael got takedowns, which I'm not 100% surprised on. He's shown that he can grapple, but he was able to get good shots off from standing while Ignacio was down in his guard. And then round 3, Fiziev did an even better job at landing strikes and getting more takedowns. I thought he won all 3 rounds, and he really just showcased the levels to this game. Ignacio's only 27, almost 28. He has a lot more to learn, and this experience in this fight I think will make him that much better. Fiziev, he's still in his prime. He's been there, done that. This guy is an absolute unit. The lightweight division is just a fucking tough, brutal division. Statistically, Rafael landed 87 total strikes, 62 of them significant. He had 4 takedowns in 1 minute and 43 seconds of control time. Ignacio landed 62 total, so 15 less. 50 of them significant, so 12 less and significant. He was 0 for 2 in takedowns and had 1 minute and 13 seconds of control time. So Rafael ends his 3-fight losing streak. He starts a new winning streak. He moves up 1 spot in the rankings to number 10. Ignacio ends his 3-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak. He is 4-2 since 2023. Now, Fiziev doesn't have a lot of clear options. In the lightweight division, he's flirted with the idea of moving down to featherweight. I'm going to assume he does stay at the lightweight division. He called out Dan Hooker. That's an absolute banger. It's sure to deliver. Let's book that fight. And for Ignacio, how about a scrap with Fares Ziam? That would be an absolute banger as well. Then in the main event, I was pretty sure Jamahal Hill was going to get beat. This definitely put a stamp on it. And to make things even more insane, Khalil Rountree has said that he had tore his MCL a few weeks prior. He couldn't spar coming up into the fight. I mean, this guy is so much fun to watch in this division. But this fight was very measured to start as well. Both men, respectfully so, were respecting each other's skills and power. A lot of the strikes that were landed in the first were leg kicks, Jamahal leading that dance and having the better ones land, which was an interesting development because Khalil has very nasty kicks of his own, especially with that Muay Thai experience being in Thailand for a while. But maybe that torn MCL played part in that. Round 2 was a lot of the same, but Hill stopped with the kicks because Rountree Jr. was landing his own bigger kicks, and he actually had Hill hobbling around quite a bit. And Khalil didn't push forward into Hill. Hill was definitely circling and moving a lot. He was in and out. But I had Khalil going up 2-0 into the 3rd round. Then in the 3rd, both men started to fire away a little bit more, be more aggressive. Khalil definitely got better of the exchanges. And at this point, unless Hill was able to get a finish, he was on his way to losing the fight. Well, in championship rounds in round 4, Rountree started landing the big overhand right and started winging it. And he was definitely breaking Jamahal down. Hill wasn't landing much because he couldn't measure up Rountree, couldn't find his target with the footwork and the stance changes that he brought. So being down 4-0 in round 5, there was more action here. Both men were firing big power shots, emptying the tank with whatever energy they had left. But again, Khalil landed more volume and more precise strikes. Hill definitely has had a tough skid. It shows that the evolution of the light heavyweight division, you can't just hope to get into close boxing range and fire bombs away. You got to add more to your game. He didn't get to do too much with his kicks after round 2 because his leg was compromised himself and he was forced to change stances a little bit. Again, I think if Rountree Jr. threw more kicks in round 4, he could have actually had a leg kick TKO. But again, now we know he had a torn MCL. And with Hill having to change stances because his leg was chewed up, it's not good for his power because he lives off one stance. But man, Rountree is a very technical light heavyweight. I love his potential matchups in the future here in this division, but a pretty dominant display by Rountree. Statistically, Jamahal landed 70 total strikes, 69 of them significant. Khalil landed 102 total and significant with a knockdown, which now Jamahal extends his losing streak to 3. He's 1-3 since 2023. He moves down 2 spots in the rankings to number 6. And Khalil starts a new winning streak. He is 3-1 since 2023. He moves up 3 spots to number 4. So what's next? I think we all want to see Khalil Rountree and Giri Prohaska. And for Jamahal, a matchup with Volkan Ozdemir. I think he'd be the perfect dance partner for Jamahal. But regardless, we're back to fight International Fight Week, UFC 317 in Las Vegas. The early prelims at 3 p.m. Pacific, the prelims at 5 p.m. Pacific on ESPN. A couple fights we will not break down that are decent. We have Nico Price taking on undefeated Dana White Contender Series alum Jacoby Smith. He's like minus 3,000. We'll see if he can live up to it against the veteran. And then we have Janata Deniz taking on LFA alum Alvin Hines, who's also undefeated. To preview this card overall, the early prelims, I mean, they're probably worth a skip, but I do think the prelims have fantastic matchmaking. They should deliver some violent fights, including the young matchup of Haider Amil and Jose Delgado. I think the winner will be the next problem in the featherweight division. And the main card has 5 absolutely fantastic fights. You really can't beat it. I am previewing this card an 8 out of 10. And I hate to see the UFC prices. I wanted to go to the Chicago event. I may still. But man, to get 100 level seats at $1,000 a ticket, it seems like that's just the going rate anymore. I thought that had been boosted at UFC 299, 300, and 301 because how stacked the cards are. But the UFC is just riding with it. International Fight Week has sold a lot of tickets, though, so they've done a good job. A lot of people have knocked this card. I am not on that bandwagon. I'm a true UFC MMA fan. Again, there are some great matchups. So we'll kick this off in the prelims. We get Terrance T-Rex McKinney, 30 years old with a 16-7 record, taking on Vacheslav Slavakos Borshev, 33 years old with an 8-5-1 record. Now, if violence really hasn't been kicked off yet in the early prelims, the tide will turn in this fight. Terrance has barely been out of the first round since signing with the UFC, and Vacheslav has finishes in 6 of his last 8 victories. Both men are in their primes at 30 and 33. They're in kind of a position where they need a win, so the pressure's on. I expect it to deliver. Breaking this down, Terrance has a purple belt in BJJ. He has a D2 wrestling background at a North Idaho college. He has the fastest finish and knockout in UFC light heavyweight division history, 7 seconds against Matt Frevola. I think I said light heavyweight. It's lightweight. He's a Contender Series and LFA alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 3-3 since 2023. 8 of his 16 wins are via knockout. 5 of his 7 losses are via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. And he does have a 4.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Vacheslav trains out of Team Alpha Male. He's an LFA, Titan FC, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2023. And 6 of his 8 wins are via knockout. Now, this fight's pretty straightforward. You expect Terrance to bring the fight to Borshev and look to steamroll him, but Vacheslav is a good pocket puncher. He's also a good counter striker and will be able to put it to T-Rex if he isn't careful. I think Terrance comes out to get an early takedown and look to sub Vacheslav. For that reason, I'm taking Terrance McKinney. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We have Tracy Cortez, 31 years old with an 11-2 record, and the number 10 next to her name, taking on Viviane Vivi Araujo, 38 years old with a 13-6 record, and the number 10 next to her name. Now, Tracy had been on a roll until last year. She got halted versus the former champion, Rose Namajunas. She had a very impressive win against Jasmine Jasdavicius with her striking skills. And Tracy has had some health issues. She seems healthy and ready to rock. Vivi is still a very tough veteran who is still fighting at a high level, but is trying to stick in the top 10. Breaking this down, Tracy is an Invicta and Contender Series alum. She's on a 1-fight losing streak. She's 1-1 since 2023. Like most women, she's not very active. Viviani has a black belt in BJJ and a black belt in Luta Livre. She's a Jungle Fight alum. She's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-2 since 2023. 4 of her 13 wins are via submission, 3 via knockout, so 7 of her 13 wins via finish. And she has a 2.5-inch reach advantage. Now, if Vivi is going to be able to take Tracy down and hold her there, it's going to be a tough night for a victory. I do expect Araujo to get takedowns, but I don't think she gets enough, and Tracy outpoints Vivi with her speed and cardio. You know, she is younger, 31 versus 38. I do think this is a must-win situation for Tracy if she plans on being a top woman in the division. For that reason, I'm taking Tracy Cortez. I am putting her on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. All right, moving on, still in the prelims. We got a couple more. We have that young showdown. Jose Delgado, 27 years old with a 9-1 record, taking on Hyder Hurricane Emil, 35 years old with an undefeated 11-0 record. Now, this is the type of matchups you love to see and why the UFC is who the UFC is. Although Hyder is 35, we're pretty much getting 2 undefeated fighters on the rise, looking to make a statement and head for the top 20 of the division. Hyder has been with the UFC for a little bit, while Jose is new to the block and is coming off a beautiful round 1 finish that has warranted him this fight. Breaking it down, Jose trains out of the MMA lab here in Phoenix. He's a rough UFL, Cage Warriors, Tough Enough, LFA, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 6-fight winning streak, 2-0 in the UFC. 5 of his 9 wins are via knockout, 4 via submission. So all 9 of his wins come via finish. And he does have a 3-inch reach advantage. Now, Hyder is a Bellator, LFA, and Contender Series alum. And 6 of his 11 wins are via knockout. Now, Hyder is coming off a war back in March. It was a very good matchup against the longer William Gomez, where he brought a well-rounded attack. He's a very powerful puncher. He already has 2 finishes in the UFC. But Jose could do a little bit of everything. And I think like a typical MMA lab fighter showcases, he has good striking defense and offensive grappling. I think that will be the big difference in this fight, if Jose can get Hyder down or not. I don't think he'll be dependent on him, but it'll help him take away from him that power and look to wear on the gas tank. You know, Jose showcased his striking potential in his UFC debut. I think he will be more technical than Hyder, but I don't think he has the power advantage, but the speed will be close. But I'm going to give the cardio edge to Jose. For that reason, I'm taking Jose Delgado, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays where possible. Moving into the prelim headliner, we have Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez, 33 years old with a 16-6 record, taking on Jack the Joker Hermanson, 37 years old with a 24-8 record. Now, as a guy that watches all the fights on every card, there's fighters that you see and immediately you just know they have talent. Jose Delgado's one of them, and so is fucking RoboCop. Now, this is another very fun matchup. Gregory is always must-see TV. I do think he learned a lot of valuable lessons in his last fight against Jared Cannonier, and I think that's going to come into play here in this fight. The question is, can RoboCop avoid gassing himself out in round 1 if he doesn't get a finish? Because if not, Jack is a savvy veteran who has faced the best of the best. He's continued to prove what he can do, and he showcased that in February against a good up-and-coming Joe Pyfer. Breaking this down, Gregory trains out of Kill Cliff FC. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's a Jungle Fight, Island Fights, LFA, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 3-2 since 2023. 10 of his 16 wins are via knockout. 4 of his 6 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now, Jack has an orthodox stance. He has a black belt in BJJ. He has the most significant body strikes landed in a UFC middleweight bout, which was 64 against Sean Strickland. He has also the most total strikes attempted in a UFC middleweight bout, 496 against Ronaldo Souza. And see, these are the things that if Gregory can't get out of round one, it could be a problem. Jack is a Cage Warriors and Bellator alum. He's on a one-fight winning streak and is 2-2 since 2022. 11 of his 24 wins are via knockout, 6 via submission, so 17 of his 24 wins via finish. 3 of his 8 losses are via knockout. Now, Jack does have a 2.5-inch reach advantage and a 3.5-inch leg reach advantage, but I do expect RoboCop to look like the much bigger fighter in the octagon. Now, personally, I think Gregory could stop anyone in the middleweight division, and much like the Cannonier fight, I think he will come forward with some heat early, and Jack does a good job of chopping the leg. He's going to have to try to avoid danger, but I think with RoboCop it's inevitable. If Jack can get out of round 2 and get his own offensive wrestling going, I could see him digging deep and winning a very close decision, but I'm not betting on that. If Gregory drops another fight from gassing out, he's going to be in a tough spot and it'll be a long route back to where he is. For that reason, I'm taking Gregory Rodriguez. We're putting RoboCop on that parlay. We marking that ish down and we getting that bread. Moving on into the main card. I'm a little surprised this is the main card headliner, but this is all about Peyton Talbot. We have Felipe Jungle Boy Lima, 27 years old with a 14-1 record, taking on Peyton Talbot, 26 years old with a 9-1 record. Now, Peyton has had a lot of hype behind him since his Contender Series victory, but it was put to the test against the volume and wrestling of the veteran Raoni Barcelos. Now, this is not an easy test for Talbot either. Felipe has good grappling. He has some very quality wins of late as well. But they're opening the pay-per-view of International Fight Week. Usually these guys come to step up to the plate on a card like this. They have all the pressure that you can get. So they are under the spotlight. Breaking this down, Felipe is a Brave and Octagon alum. He's on a 14-fight winning streak, 2-0 in the UFC. Peyton is an A1 alum and former champion with 2 successful title defenses. He's also a Contender Series alum. 2 of his last 3 fights have been Performance of the Night. He's showing up. He's showing out. That's why he's on the pay-per-view. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 5-1 since 2023, 4-1 in the UFC. 7 of his 9 wins are via knockout, and he has a 2.5-inch reach advantage. Now, I think Felipe is going to be all over Peyton with his offensive wrestling, especially watching the film against Peyton and Barcelos. Peyton is going to have to find a way to keep him off with his kicks, the knees up the middle, uppercuts, etc. I think this is going to be like the O'Malley-Merab fight. I think Peyton has a higher ceiling, but Felipe has more experience. I do think he's closer to the best version of himself today, although neither of these guys are in their primes. But there is a chance Peyton could find a finish, but Lima hasn't been finished yet, and I don't think that's going to happen here. For that reason, I'm taking Felipe Lima, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays. Is Felipe the dog? I know the odds have changed quite a bit on this. Let's see what they say. So Felipe is the favorite now. Pretty good favorite too. Moving on, we get Renato Money Moicano, 36 years old with a 26-1 record and the number 10 next to his name, taking on Beneil Dariush, 36 years old with a 22-6-1 record and the number 9 next to his name. Now, this is another example of how 2 men at the same age are really in different positions in their career. You know, Beneil has been with the UFC since 2014, but he has been at the top of the division, which is a very good lightweight division, since 2020. Moicano has been with the UFC since 2014 as well, but I would say he's had a stiffer road now looking back at his resume, but he is developed and fighting at the best of his abilities right now, And not being a big name fighter until the past few years, he really started being loud on the mic with his YouTube. He's really started to create a following and a fan presence. But Dariush is also coming off back-to-back first-round losses. And I just don't feel like Dariush has the fire in him like he used to. Where Moicano recently defeated BSD with that nasty broken collarbone. The guy's a dog, and I think we see that in this fight. Breaking it down, Renato has a submission grappling style. He trains out of American Top Team. He's a Jungle Fight alum and former interim champion. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 3-1 since 2023. 10 of his 20 wins are via submission, and 3 of his 6 losses are via knockout. Now, Beneil has a BJJ style. He trains out of King's MMA. He has a black belt in BJJ and Muay Thai. He won gold in the No-Gi Worlds in 2008, 9, and 10. He also won silver in the Worlds in 2009, 10, and 12 in the gi, and won in 2010 in the No-Gi Openweight. He's a grappling stud. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2022. 8 of his 22 wins are via submission, 5 via knockout, so 13 of his 22 wins via finish, and 5 of his 6 losses are via knockout. Now, I think with both being very good grapplers, we're going to see a striking battle. I think that Beneil has more knockout power and will be looking to set up big shots, where I think Renato is going to be active and dirty and find a way to get damage, closing the distance up against the clinch. If someone were to initiate the grappling, I'd actually expect it to be Moicano. Dariush has serious submission ability, so that may fray him away. 2 grapplers equal a striking battle. I'm all here for it. I'm taking Renato Moicano. I am avoiding him on any parlays where possible. If Beneil has been taking this seriously and has that fire in him, he could very easily upset Moicano. Then we get the final 3 fights. And oh my God, those other 2 fights on the main card are great, but this one is going to be a fan favorite, fight of the night potential. We get Brandon Raw Dog Royval, 32 years old with a 17-7 record and the number 1 next to his name, taking on Joshua the Fearless Van, 23 years old with a 14-2 record and the number 11 next to his name. Now, in the past few years, Joshua Van is becoming one of the more polarizing fighters in the flyweight division and really the UFC at this point. He only gets a couple weeks' notice to fight for the number 1 contender spot as Manel Kopp had pulled out, and he is actually the favorite after dismantling Bruno Silva in his last fight. I don't agree with that at all, especially after Brandon defeated another good prospect in his last bout against Tatsuro Taira, who I think is more well-rounded than Van. But Brandon, he is a high-output striker, just like Van. They both like to live in the chaos. This is a certified banger. Breaking it down, Brandon trains out of Factory X. He has a black belt in BJJ. 3 of his last 5 fights have been performance of the night or fight of the night. He shows up, he shows out. He has the most significant strikes attempted in a UFC flyweight bout, which was 510 in the Brandon Moreno second fight. He has the most total strikes landed in a UFC flyweight bout, 281, which was in that Moreno fight, as well as the most total strikes attempted in a UFC flyweight bout, 556 in that same fight. And he also has the most total head strikes landed in a UFC flyweight bout, 248, which was against the current champion Alexandre Pantoja in their second fight. He's a World Series of Fighting and LFA alum and former champion. He's on a 2-fight winning streak, 3-1 since 2023. 9 of his 17 wins are via submission, 4 via knockout, so 13 of his 17 wins via finish. He has a 3-inch reach advantage and a 3.5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Joshua is a Fury-UFC alum and former champion. He has the highest significant strikes landed per minute in UFC history at 8.2, not just flyweight, in UFC history. He has the highest striking differential in UFC flyweight division history at 2.94. He's on a 4-fight winning streak, 7-1 since 2023, and 7 of his 14 wins are via knockout. Now, only at 23 years old, people forget, Joshua has some of the best boxing in the flyweight division. But I think Brandon could make it ugly. He can hang with Van on the feet. Both men have amazing cardio and grappling defense, but if Van has success in striking, I could see Raw Dog getting takedowns of his own, which he did against Tatsuro Taira, who's a lot better grappler. And he also did it against Brandon Moreno, who's much better as well. I just don't see a world where Van outpoints and lands the cleaner shots against Raw Dog. I do think a 3-round fight favors Van more so than a 5-round fight. But the only person that was able to get a finish was Brandon Moreno against Raw Dog. And that was back in 2020. For that reason, like Brandon said, I'm always the underdog. They always bet against me. I think he proves the world wrong again. He shows why he's the number 1 contender. For that reason, I am taking the underdog. The dog's coming to eat. Ho, ho! We are putting Raw Dog on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. I can't wait for these fights, man. I'm a little bummed I'm not watching them live. Then in the co-main event, we have the flyweight championship bout. Alexandre the Cannibal Pantoja, 35 years old with a 29-5 record, taking on Kai Don't Blink Kara France, 32 years old with a 25-11-1 record, and then number 4 next to his name. Now at the top of the flyweight division, we have seen a ton of rematches. The story of this one dates back to 2016 in the Ultimate Fighter Tournament of Champions that set up the flyweight division in the UFC, and in that bout, Pantoja won via unanimous decision. You know, at that time, Kai was a much greener fighter than Pantoja, but it was still a great fight, and I expect another great fight this time, as both men are in their primes at 35 and 32. I do think it's clear that Kai will have the striking advantage, and Alexandre the grappling advantage. Kai has kind of earned this title shot by default with all the rematches and people facing each other already. This is going to be a very tough challenge for Pantoja in his 4th title defense. Breaking this down, Alexandre trains out of American Top Team. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's had 3 successful title defenses. He has the 2nd most title fight wins in UFC flyweight division history with 4. 4 of his last 6 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. He's also not boring. He shows up, he shows out. He's tied with Demetrius Johnson for the most submissions in UFC flyweight division history with 5. He's tied with DJ and Davison Figueiredo for most finishes in UFC flyweight division history with 7. He's tied with Joseph Benavidez and Demetrius Johnson for most wins in the flyweight division history at 13. Potentially he could break away in this fight. He's an Ultimate Fighter and RFA alum and former RFA champion. He's on a 7-fight winning streak. 11 of his 29 wins are via submission, 8 via knockout, so 19 of his 29 wins via finish. Now, Kai trains out of City Kickboxing. He has a blue belt in BJJ. 5 of his last 7 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. He also shows up, he shows out. He has the 2nd most knockdowns landed in UFC flyweight division history with 8. He's an Ultimate Fighter alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-2 since 2022. And 12 of his 25 wins are via knockout. Now, this is going to be another hard-fought dogfight. I can see it coming down to a close decision. I think Alexandre is going to come in with a well-rounded attack, and Kai is going to look to fire off kicks and look to measure up the big right hand for a knockout attempt. But Alexandre, I expect to come forward, and I think will control middle of the octagon. That's a lot easier said than done against a striker like Kai Kara-France. But Pantoja has never been knocked out either. I do respect Kai. He could find a way. But I think Pantoja is going to wear on Kai with his grappling, look to attack the body and steal rounds, which he is a pro at. So I'm saying, and still, I'm taking Alexandre Pantoja. We're putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Then we have the main event. Yes, I wish we got Ilya and Islam, but we're getting Ilya El Matador Topuria, 28 years old with an undefeated 16-0 record and the number 3 next to his name, taking on Charles Do Bronx Oliveira, 35 years old with a 35-10-1 record and the number 2 next to his name. Now, this fight is not going to go to a decision. I am sure of it. The reason being is that in a 5-round fight, Ilya has too many chances at a finish, and if Charles has his way, I expect a submission victory. Ilya has knocked out Max and Volk, although there is a bit of a crutch on that Volk knockout since Volk was finished by Islam just a few months prior. But Charles has been in a ton of fights, 46 pro fights. He's been very durable, and he hasn't been knocked out since December of 2017, and he's a much better fighter now than in 2017. He hasn't been finished, taking on Michael Chandler 2 times, Justin Gaethje, and Dustin Poirier, some of the best in the sport. Charles has actually been somewhat of a striker killer in his run in the lightweight division in his prime, so watch out. Breaking this down, Ilya has an orthodox stance. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's the current featherweight champion with 1 successful title defense. No, not current. He gave that up. But he now is seeking a chance at double champ status. He's the first Georgian champion in UFC history. His last 5 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He was the 2024 Fighter of the Year. He's a Cage Warriors and Brave alum. He's undefeated on a 16-fight winning streak. 8 of his 16 wins are via submission, 6 via knockout, so 14 of his 16 wins via finish. Now, Charles has a BJJ style with a 4th-degree black belt. He has a black Prajid in Muay Thai. He was the CBJJE World Champion in 2007 in the Blue Belt division. He's the former lightweight champion with 1 successful title defense. 4 of his last 7 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. Again, he shows up, he shows out. He's a Ring of Combat alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-1 since 2023. 21 of his 25 wins are via submission, 10 via knockout, so 31 of his 35 wins via finish. 4 of his 10 losses are via knockout and 4 via submission, so 8 of his 10 losses are also via finish. Ilya likes to make that clear. He thinks he gives up. Now, Charles has a 5-inch reach advantage and a 4-inch leg reach advantage. Again, what's scary with Ilya is he's not even in his prime yet at 28. The question is going to be, is how is Ilya's size, power, and speed going to translate in an upper division? Because it really is a different beast. But he had a brutal weight cut at the featherweight division, and I'm not betting against him. I've typically bet against Charles. I picked Dustin Poirier against him and Gaethje, and that didn't work out very well. But Charles, as we've mentioned, and a lot of people have, he's kind of a straight-up striker. I think Ilya is going to find a way by round 3 to cut off the octagon and find the kill shot. You know, Charles is down to throw down as well. I don't expect him to be the pressurer in this fight, and he's going to have to win the leg kick battle, which is very tough against Ilya as well. Unless Charles can rack up a bunch of takedowns and exhaust Ilya, I don't expect him to win this fight. So I am also saying, and still, we're taking Ilya Topuria, we're putting them on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. International Fight Week is upon us. 5 absolutely stacked main card bouts. Some good matchmaking in the prelims. And we better enjoy it because next weekend we're off for the 4th of July holiday. And then the UFC heads back to a location-based fight night in Nashville, Tennessee. This card should deliver some violence down south. It's headlined by the 10th-ranked Derek Lewis and the 14th-ranked Taliesin Teixeira. That's episode 104. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.